Thank you very much, Jonathan, for the spirited singing. Appreciate the godly prayer, Nick, and the distinct and clear Bible reading, Brady. Appreciate that so much. Very special welcome to all our visitors, and we do have several visitors with us. Appreciate you being here this morning. Also, on behalf of the congregation, would like to extend appreciation to the golf family, Mary Ruth and Billy and all the golf men for hosting our Halloween extravaganza last night. I know everybody had a great time. It was good to get together and fellowship with one another, and it was a great outing. Joyce and I will be going with Bill and Tommy over to Houston in the morning. So I'll be out of pocket some this week. I'll have my phone, so if you need to call me, you can call me. Something comes up, Jonathan will be around the first of the week, so we'll check in with him. So y'all keep all of us in your prayers as we go over there. Pray for a good reports coming out of Houston. You can't miss it, really, if you listen or watch the news at all nowadays. There are two caravans of individuals from Central America making its way up through Mexico into the United States. Their intent is to enter the United States and stay. Some, no doubt, are coming for a better life. Some, no doubt, are leaving the living conditions of their home country. Some, no doubt, are coming for the government assistance that may be available to them. And as is the case, obviously, many times these individuals are coming for evil reasons. This issue of immigration is a volatile issue. Everyone has their own ideas as to how it should proceed or what should happen. And unfortunately, this immigration issue has divided America right now. My hope is that we can come together as a group of people rather than always being divided over, it seems, everything. My goal this morning is to share with you my struggles over the last 20 plus years, or even longer really, with this immigration issue. And I want to frame my struggles with what I went through with how I read the Bible. And I will be happy to discuss my thoughts with any of you at any time regarding this. And maybe, by give and take and discussion, we both may be able to learn a little bit more. But this question I'll pose to you this morning: how should a Christian respond to those individuals within such caravans desiring to enter the United States? How should Christians respond to these caravans? My grandparents, Antonio and Teresa Maranto, themselves immigrated from Sicily in the early 1890s. They came into New York. They came past the Statue of Liberty. They were processed through Ellis Island. They then boarded a ship, headed for New Orleans. Then they caught a boat heading north up the Mississippi River to Vicksburg. There, my grandfather opened a fruit stand on a busy corner there in Vicksburg. Later, they made their way up Deer Creek to Anguilla, the town that I grew up in. And by the year 1900, my grandfather operated a grocery store there in Anguilla. A store, Maranto's Corner, is still there in Anguilla today. So I know I am the grandson of immigrants who immigrated to the United States through a lawful immigration process, who immediately went to work to support themselves, who received no welfare benefits at all and who assimilated into the fabric of America. Therefore, as I look at this issue of immigration, I don't hold any preconceived issues, okay, or grudges, hostile attitudes regarding immigrants, as my family are certainly immigrants themselves. While Joyce and I lived and worked over in the Delta, we were members of the West President Street Church of Christ there, who had a really large Hispanic outreach program. And we were participants in the program there that taught Hispanics English using the Bible. It was a form of evangelism as well, and very fruitful, all right? That particular program continues to be very fruitful today. Now, the majority of the Hispanics were honest, good-natured, hard-working, and most of them had a valid work visa. Most of them worked in the catfish plants there in the Delta. But there were some who had overstayed their visas, and there were some who didn't have any visas at all, and they knew that, all right? I remember one Hispanic who was with child was being deported back to Mexico. She was put on the bus there in Greenwood, but she slipped off the bus in Jackson and hid out basically until the baby was born. All right, once the baby was born, of course, the baby became a U.S. citizen, and of course, it changed that particular person's status here in the United States. Now, at that time, I was still working with a law enforcement agency, and I struggled, okay, with this situation. That is, individuals within our midst knowingly breaking the law while reaping personal benefits and assistance at the same time. I had a give and take in this, all right? My heart, on one hand, went out for these individuals, yet on the other hand, I felt like they needed to obey the law as well. Now, some within the church didn't have any problem at all, morally or legally, with this issue. Yet there were some who did have a problem with the issue. And Joyce and I struggled with this issue. And we still struggle with this issue to some degree. But for the most part, I believe we've arrived at a livable position, we believe, supported by biblical principles. And I'm going to share that with you this morning. But again, I will be glad to discuss this issue with any of you at your convenience. In Acts 17:2, we find that the Apostle Paul reasoned, okay, with the Jews as it pertained to Scripture. And I believe we too have to reason with each other and reason within Scripture to come to an understanding regarding this issue as to how a Christian should approach illegal immigration. A basic question that has to be asked regarding this is, what role does God intend the civil government to play? What role does God intend the civil government to play? The whole point of civil government is to protect the citizens and enforce the laws. These laws support the whole of society together, not just one individual citizen, but the whole. This entails passing laws, including immigration law, for the good of the country as a whole. As a whole. The authority that God delegates to civil authorities focuses on justice, that is, making the law itself, and not in and of itself deciding mercy, that is, itself as a point of law. For the most part, biblical teachings of mercy are up to us as individuals and not necessarily the civil government. See, this is the current issue being argued now between justices. Some justices apply the law pertinent to the Constitution, period, whatever law was passed. Other judges seem to want to legislate from the bench, which means they'll make up law as it comes along or as they feel. See, this is the same pitting against one another here. Standards of justice, that is the law itself, has to be accompanied by judgment and punishment. Otherwise, the standard of justice is nothing. Is nothing. Justice is not justice if it is not followed by enforcement. Now, as Brady read there in Romans 13:1, Scripture clearly teaches that God charges civil authority with enacting laws for the nation. It protects order, it protects the citizens, and it punishes wrongdoers. Civil authority acts for and on behalf of the whole of the population, the whole. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God. It's Romans 13:1. And those which exist are established by God. Therefore, he who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. Now, there's similar verses over in 1 Peter 2:13 and Titus 3:1. We won't turn there this morning, but they're there. And we must understand that these verses are tempered with what Peter said in Acts 5:29. We must obey God and not man. So there we have it. In regard specifically to the immigration issue, some have tried to get off point within the country by saying that the United States is a nation of immigrants, and therefore we should be welcoming all immigrants, no matter who they are. Some point to the inscription on the Statue of Liberty, which reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Now, that was a mantra in the past, and many think that we should be continuing to live up to that today. Of course, at one time, our country did welcome all immigrants. The country needed to be populated, and immigration was really desired. That was during the time that my grandparents came in here. But we have to realize that now it's a different situation. It's a different situation. Those immigrants came in the past under the oversight, let's say, and with full authority, let's say, from the United States government. And an immigration law was passed, and it is still viable and operates today. There is a legal way for individuals to come into the United States. There's also temporary visas for business and work and pleasure and schooling, okay? All of those have to be applied for. However, over the years, the flow of foreigners coming into our country around these legal laws have increased to the point where our immigration courts and our border patrol has been overwhelmed. And judges have allowed these individuals where we have no place to put them, so to speak, they have allowed them to be released here in our country, supposedly on a temporary basis, temporary time. Our system cannot hold the numbers coming in right now. And so You know, we've got the term illegal immigrant, we've got the term illegal alien, we've got the term undocumented worker. All of those basically means the same type person that we're talking about. By not following existing law, obviously these individuals are in fact breaking the civil law of the United States. And in turn, since they are breaking the law of God. Now, some individuals point to the policies of the United States government over the years within Central America, which they say has led to the reasons these people are leaving, and therefore it's our fault, so we should let all of them in. Some people say that. However, we learn within the Bible that Jesus did not teach his disciples to work to overthrow the Roman government or actively fight against the Roman government. And despite the problems of Rome, Jesus' teaching there in Matthew 22:21 was to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which was an instruction to follow the law of Rome. And a pertinent point also, I think, in a similar way, is to understand that despite the problems associated with the issue of slavery, the Bible does not outright forbid slavery. But in Onesimus' case, he had to return to Philemon and be the best slave he could be. Now, these are biblical examples of individuals having to endure harsh personal circumstances within their own countries. The Bible doesn't say for those people enduring those harsh circumstances within their country, it doesn't mandate for them to leave. Really, they should stay there and try to make it better, as the forefathers of this country did at one time. Then there are others who believe that open borders, which will allow anyone at any time to be allowed to enter legally into the United States. And they quote various verses of Scripture, like Matthew 7:12, however you want people to treat you, so treat them. Meaning, if you were an immigrant coming in, wouldn't you want to get in, so you should treat that person how you would like to be treated. And there's a similar argument that's called the Micah mandate in Micah 6:8 that says basically, he has shown you, O man of God, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, we must understand that all of these arguments are being used to allow immigrants to enter our country, but they're directed towards individuals. Yes, we are to treat all people properly. That's from us as an individual. But the civil government, the civil authority, has another point of law to make. They have passed certain laws dealing with immigration. And we can't change those. We can be nice, yes. We can be accommodating to some extent if we can. But we can't change law. And the argument leaves out the fact, the power and legality of the civil government to enact the law itself in the first place. As long as those laws do not conflict with the law of God, then we have to follow it. And there's a little argument on the side that, hey, we are all aliens and strangers in this land. This is not our home. We're just passing through. Therefore, just like the immigrant, he's an alien and stranger. We should take them in, etc. Again. But now keep in mind, the alien and stranger in the Old Testament is not the same as the illegal immigrant today. The alien and stranger in the Old Testament was not where they were illegally, you see. That argument cannot hold water. And then several places in the Old Testament, God regarded borders as very meaningful. I don't have time to go into all of them. Deuteronomy, Ezekiel, Numbers, all talk about that. Back in the Old Testament, no violations of immigration policy. If you remember, Moses sought permission to go into Edom. He sought permission to cross the Amorites' territory in Numbers 20 and 21. Asked permission, but guess what? He was denied permission to cross their land. Abraham was ordered to leave Egypt when he lied to Pharaoh. Today, the illegal immigrant is here illegally and has made a choice to intentionally enter the United States. Really, the legal issue here is simple. It is simple if we will rid ourselves of the emotional part of this. And immigration law has been broken. Immigration laws have been enacted by Congress. They're not in conflict with any of God's laws. The scriptural issue here is simple. A civil law that is not in conflict with God's law has been broken. Therefore, the plight of the illegal immigrant puts them in direct conflict with the law of the land and consequently the law of God. Do I hold any ill will towards immigrants? No. Do I hate illegal immigrants? Absolutely not. Will I mistreat any illegal immigrant? Absolutely not. But you know, just as I expect any one of you and every one of you to obey the civil law, I expect nothing less from a legal visitor or an illegal alien. Over the years in dealing with this issue, except in the case of an emergency dealing with someone's life or the harm of a child, I came to believe that to actively support and assist an illegal immigrant in their continued violation of immigration law and consequently civil law is wrong civilly, and because it is wrong civilly, it is wrong spiritually as well. In closing, there are some who believe that because the government doesn't have a serious ongoing effort to round up illegals, then the government is giving tacit approval to them being here. However, as a former law enforcement agent, I know that denotes lack of resources more than approval that they remain. Meanwhile, financially, regarding our country, I do not believe we can afford it. We're $22 trillion in debt now. I do not believe we can afford the cost of the illegal immigrant. And scripturally, I believe the illegal immigrant is breaking the law. And we should handle relationships with illegal immigrants just as we would handle relationships with anyone else who is in violation of civil law and God's law. Ask yourself this question as you ponder this issue. And again, I'll be glad to talk with any of you regarding this. Would I assist anyone who has broken the law to escape capture by the authorities? Would I assist in the housing, feeding, and clothing of anyone who has broken the law and are, in effect, hiding to escape notice by authorities? Would I do that? Would I do either of those? Just as the Apostle Paul sent the slave Onesimus back to Philemon, I believe Christians have an obligation to do the same. Again, this is my biblical analysis of this issue, and I'll be glad to discuss it. This morning, if there's any of you who have not become a member of God's family by rendering obedience to God in the form of being baptized, we can assist you in that today. If you've wandered away, we will be glad to assist in bringing you back, praying for you, and having God said that he will forgive you of your sin. For any reason we can help you this morning, let it be made known now while we stand and sing.